I'm David Liggett with Data Center Hawk. I am here with INAP's Senior Vice President of Sales, Rich O'Day, and we're talking about the data center industry next. Well, Rich O'Day, welcome to Hawk Talk.
It's great to be here, David. Thanks.
You bet. This is our conversations with data center industry leaders and experts, and so we're really excited that you're here. You are Senior Vice President of Sales with INAP and recently stepped into that role. So we're going to talk about a number of different things today. And, you know, one of the things I really love to do during these conversations, as I mentioned, we've had 20 of them this year. You're the 20th, so congrats.
Yeah. I'm waiting for my gift.
Yeah, that doesn't get you much. But,
yeah, that's okay.
But, you know, one of the things I love to do is get to hear about people's background in the industry. And you have a really interesting one, especially when you consider the type of companies that you've worked with up until this point. And so why don't we just start there, talk about your background in the space and kind of the road that you took to put you in the position to now lead the sales efforts at INAP.
Yeah, absolutely. No, and again, thank you for the opportunity. Yeah, I mean, background-wise, most of my career, all of my career has been in sales.
Okay.
Sales as a salesperson, and then sales leadership over the past 25 years or so, primarily in financial services and fintech. That's kind of were my roots, and then very specifically within that, it was in the world of sales and trading, kind of capital markets. Think big trading floors with loads of traders and people screaming and yelling and buying and selling, and all the products and services that supported that. So that was the bulk of my career, based up in New York, but traveled internationally, nationally. Heavy fintech. What led me into the world of, and I was always had a technology bent, more mid-office trading platforms, trading systems. And what led me into the world of the data center world was the world of trading was starting to move electronic, right?
Sure.
So the exchanges were starting to kind of have their matching engines, and everything was moving around about speed and distance and so forth. And I was actually working at Dow Jones at the time. Make a long story short, we had a product and service that was geared towards the low latency trading guys out, particularly in Chicago. And we built the service, and we were bringing it up to, I think the Dow Jones data center was just someplace up in North Jersey, and nobody was buying the service. So I hopped on a plane, went out to talk to the likes of Citadel, and said, we built it. Why aren't you guys buying this content? And they said, well, you need to bring it to Cermak. And I said, what's Cermak?
Sure.
This is maybe 10, 12 years ago.
Yeah.
And so the point of the story was that's how I got to know the world of Equinix, which I wound up working there for about 6.5 years as a sales leader. But it was the early days of electronic trading, so I was fortunate enough to kind of see the world shifting from voice brokering and trading on terminals to all electronic, and so I had the opportunity then to move into Equinix to help them as they were building out the world of electronic trading, and what ultimately became a pretty dominant position in terms of hosting the world's exchanges in places like Cermak and Secaucus and Slough. So that's kind of a little back of the envelope, but that's my background. That's how I got into the world of infrastructure and data centers.
Yeah, so your time, spent a lot, or your time was spent a lot with financial organizations and really helping them think through how to best approach their IT infrastructure decisions. As you've watched those companies change from where they were 10 years ago to maybe 5 years ago to today, what is happening in their mindsets and their heads as they're considering their IT infrastructure? What are the most important things to companies like that when they're making those decisions?
Right. No, great question. And I would answer the question in speaking to two different parts of the financial institutions. So in the world of sales and trading, capital markets, where they're chasing alpha and it's all about execution and trading. I mean, one of the key things obviously is the quality of the sites and the locations of the sites, but networking is really, really important because they tend to be global, they tend to trade around the world, and so a selection of infrastructure and sites that are heavily networked was always a pretty key point between the Americas and EMEA and AP. So networking and speed of networking and choice of networking was very important. I think continues to be important in the world of sales and trading. More broadly speaking, I think within the financial services industry, it's an interesting question. I would go back maybe 8, 9 years ago when I would talk to some of the bigger financial services firms and around the advent of cloud, and this was more in the retail banking, commercial banking side, and many of the large banks had said to me, we will never go cloud. We will be private cloud. We will never go public cloud. It just will never happen. We're too regulated. There's too much sensitive data. And I think fast forward to just in the past few years, many of my customers now in the financial space are absolutely understanding and I think, really segmenting workloads and content and
sure.
applications that really should live in the cloud and in the public cloud versus private. So it's been an interesting evolution. I think the financial services industry has really embraced the world of hybrid cloud and understands the ability to move certain workloads and content and applications into public while keeping certain client data and certain applications certainly behind the firewall within their own data center.
Yeah, and I think it speaks to the data center user becoming more mature, and they're and not just financial companies, but obviously other organizations and the way they view their IT infrastructure. And so I think as technology has gotten better, I think some of these companies have recognized that we need to really embrace the infrastructure options, and it doesn't mean that co-location is right for all, or cloud is right for all, or hybrid solutions are right for all. But I think that companies are really evaluating that in ways they never have before, and it speaks to some of the maturity that we've seen. And I think just thinking about your time at Equinix and the amount of companies you were able to work with and see, how did that experience really set you up to take the role at INAP that you're in now? What are some of the things that you learned there, or some of the things maybe just as a sales leader that you were put in front of there that really set you up well to lead the sales efforts at INAP?
No, absolutely. I think it goes back to my earlier comment. So what did I take away from Equinix and that I think is going to help me, hopefully already is, after my 90 days so far at INAP. I think it goes back to David. The initial why I joined Equinix was that it was a much smaller company than it is today. In terms of revenue and size, and that's great, and loads of success, and we're very blessed to have so much success at Equinix, and me personally as well. But in the early days, it was about creating that ecosystem for the financial services industry. So point being, it was lots of good building blocks were existing within Equinix, but they weren't really all kind of put together. It was heavy business development. It was trying to attract the world's exchanges, the stock exchanges and so forth, to colo and within an Equinix site. So it's a very heavy biz dev, I guess is the point. And so I say that because I was fortunate enough to have a lot of success in leading the team that achieved that at Equinix. And I think that's a lot of where INAP is. And that was really my main attraction to INAP. Is it's an organization that has tremendous roots in certainly in networking. A lot of people know them as the performance IP firm, and we absolutely still are. But the co-location and the cloud services are great building blocks, great foundational work. So that's really, I think, what attracted me was it's not so much of a challenge, but the opportunity of hopefully being able to lend my experience to taking those building blocks and organizing them in such a way where we can basically go to market and really solve real world problems for our customers. And it starts with really getting the message out. Doing interviews like this to let people know, hey, where is INAP and what's happening. So I think that's it was the biz dev work I did at Equinix and the good fortune to have some success there in terms of kind of taking those building blocks, integrating them, and I think that's the core thrust of what we're doing here at INAP today.
And a lot has happened for INAP in the last 2 years. In fact, I guess 2 years ago it was called INTERNAP, and so you all have been
can't say that anymore.
We'll strike it. But you all are undergoing a pretty massive rebranding effort now. And I want to read something that your CEO said on one of the earnings calls recently, because I think it probably speaks to where the organization is today. But he said, and this is Pete Aquino, said, we are very excited about our progress to date and declare that INAP 2.0 is now on offense. So talk about that statement and just the idea of this effort to rebrand the company and really set it up for kind of the new direction. And it's a lot more fun to be on offense than defense, right? So as a sales leader, and we are. Lot to unpack in that statement, trying to kind of keep it succinct. So absolutely, the legacy was INTERNAP. The firm is now for the past year or two been called INAP, and that's great. The rebranding is, I think we need to put a finer point on that. Absolutely, optically, if you go to our website now, just this past week, whole new look and feel, new logo. It looks great, right? Really kind of just advances the story. But I think the real point of the messaging is it's not just the rebranding, but it is really the messaging itself, right? That is really the core of what the INAP 2.0 is. And what is that?
Again, I mentioned earlier, I think a lot of firms, as I've talked to customers, kind of, it was INAP and it was the roots were in network. And what's the story now, right? Well, I'll tell you the story right now is very simple. We have invested heavily in our flagship co-location sites, right?
Sure.
In terms of Arizona,
You bet.
as well as a new site in Perimeter area out in Atlanta.
Yep.
So we are now a co-location. We are a very strong cloud story, and absolutely the root's still there in network. So it's really, it's the three components of the business.
Yeah, that's good.
And it's not just network anymore, right, to put it that way.
Yeah.
We acquired a firm called SingleHop, which is a
Sure.
fantastic cloud offering,
Yeah.
right? So it really expands our bare metal, our disaster recovery as a service, right? Our virtual private and dedicated private cloud services, and then our core colo. My view is, and I think when we say we're getting on offense, depending on the research firms, I think we all would agree there's roughly about $80 billion in IT spend that is part of the transformation from on-prem enterprise
Yes.
IT into the cloud. Now,
Yep.
$80 billion is a lot of money, right? So where we sit and where we think where it differentiates INAP is that combination of colo, cloud, and also our core roots and network, right? My sense is many customers, many enterprise IT execs are challenged with, hey, I'm managing all of this infrastructure, perhaps in my own data center. I'm being pressed as I should to, what's our strategy around cloud, and how can we start to migrate? And I think most customers, most IT execs are going to tick the box around hybrid, a mix of public and private as they make that journey. INAP is perfectly situated for that.
Sure.
Between our co-location offering,
Yep.
between the vast amount of cloud offerings we have, we also offer managed AWS and Azure, and then our core roots in network and network latency. So I believe we sit right in the middle of this big transformation
Yes.
from on-prem into cloud, and I think when Pete talks about INAP 2.0 being on the offense, that's how we're going on the offense.
Yeah, that's good. And that actually, one of the questions I specifically wanted to ask you was, and it fits right into what you just said, is in regards to data center users approaching their IT infrastructure decisions related to co-location, cloud, and some sort of hybrid between the two. And so based on your experience and where INAP is today, what should those, and this might just be for the data center users that are watching our content, but what should they be thinking about? I mean, how do they approach that decision today with knowing the needs they have, but also knowing that things could change 6 months, a year, 3, 5 years from now, and that doesn't impact their infrastructure. So what does their mindset need to be when they're thinking about what path to go down? How do they do that well and wisely so that they're positioned down the road to be in the best decision they can be?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think the first part is, and what I've seen I'd say over the past 3 to 5 years is how the enterprise looks at its infrastructure.
Okay.
It's certainly been a core competency, but I think the question is, should it be a core competency? Meaning that in the dynamic pace of change today in digital transformation and AI and machine learning and kind of core to the edge. I mean, there's so many things going on. Does an IT organization really want to be spending its time and investing its people and personal capital in managing its infrastructure? So I've seen a big shift from looking at infrastructure as a move from CapEx to OpEx.
You bet.
Basically move infrastructure into a colo model or potentially into cloud or some derivation of both, so that the IT organization can really focus on really kind of higher end work, let's say, to really kind of support the business unit.
Yeah,
right?
sure.
So we're seeing that. So then the question becomes, where do you go? I mean, to me, the macro principle that has to be applied is choice. Whether it's choice in cloud, whether it's choice in colo, whether it's choice in network, because it is the pace is changing so fast, right? And what workloads might make sense to go into a public cloud today may or may not make sense in 6 months time or 18 months time.
Yeah.
So I think that what I've seen customers who've been successful in the transformation into the cloud has been absolutely. It starts with obviously planning and segmentation, but really understanding the workloads.
Yeah,
and
that's good.
What workloads really are best fit, are proper for public, which ones are not, right?
Yep.
And having a well thought out migration process around that. I think bringing in third parties, I think is a great opportunity. Firms that have that experience in terms of migration to the cloud, because it may be a little more difficult than it looks on the face of it.
Yep.
So I think it's a mix of things, but the core to me is to have the agility. You need to have choice, and I think a key decision process should be to make sure that as you architect your migration to the cloud, that you're providing yourself with enough flexibility.
Yeah, totally.
And choice.
Yeah, and it's when we think about the things that are really leading data center users' decisions and the characteristics behind that, I think you said flexibility is so big today, and it's one of the reasons INAP and other data center operators are really working to offer a solution that will allow those users to be flexible. And one of the other things that I've seen just through INAP is the importance behind performance. And that is really a thread, I think, that is something that you all stood for 5 years ago and something that you're really standing for today. Why is that so important to INAP?
It's the core of who we are. I mean, again, it goes back to the roots in network performance and performance IP and route optimization, and so that's what we were known as. And still should be. Yeah. I mean, not to we certainly were proud of our network, our roots in the network. But when it comes to performance, again, I mean, our client base, our the industry in general, the enterprise IT or the IT executive, I mean, they're challenged with just so many things, right? And what they need ultimately is to be able to look at a partner that's going to deliver on performance, right? Performance of application, performance of network, performance of cloud, customer service performance, right? Sure. I mean, so what we're doing when we talk about our performance as a part of INAP 2.0, it's really making that commitment to our customer organization about when you come to INAP and when you become a customer of INAP, it is all about performance and how we execute and how we deliver to you as a customer. And that's the core of where we're going with INAP 2.0. And it's the core message really that I bring out to my customer base around really two things: the breadth of services that we're offering now, where again perhaps people saw us as only one service. It's now network, colo, and cloud. To say that again, but it's also about performance, right? And it's about dependability of as a customer of INAP.
Yeah. What are the challenges you see data center users facing related to their connectivity, and how they're looking at their IT infrastructure has become so important to businesses today, and how they run and how they function.
Right.
Companies, there's not a company we see that's depending less on technology moving forward. So. The connectivity piece, we believe, has become much more important. What are some of the challenges that you see companies wrestling with as they approach their network infrastructure and how to do that best?
Yeah. Well, I think the big challenge is core to the edge, right? It's edge compute, which to me is basically, with you have a mobile workforce, right? And everybody's using different devices and tablets and iPhones and whatever, Android. So again, as an IT executive, you have to support a mobile user base, a mobile customer base through multiple delivery platforms. And the idea of kind of bringing everything back to your monolithic data center and long hauling all the content back, it makes sense, I think, in certain workloads, but in many it doesn't. So I think that the challenge around edge computing and what it means to networking is that it's about the network. I mean, it just is. It's about location. It's about being with a provider that can basically, if your strategy is to move apps to the edge, right, and move your apps closer to your user base, closer to the eyeballs, let's say, right, so that you're reducing the latency and an improved experience for your end user, whether they're internal employees or whether they're customers. Or both. Location matters. Yeah. Right. And location of data center, right? Because you got to push your apps out to the edge, right? And then it's also ultimately about the performance of the network. Right now, and again, that plays very strongly into INAP and our roots in performance IP and our core backbone and our network capabilities, and also in terms of our locations, in terms of the fact that we are located in most major metros in the U.S.
Yeah. Right? So do you feel like edge computing is? I say this all the time, that edge computing is the new cloud, meaning, it seems like 5 to 10 years ago we were talking a lot about cloud, how cloud was growing and changing things, and we're still talking about that, but I think now edge is kind of on the edge as far as what's going to happen in the future. And so do you think the edge will have as big of impact on the industry maybe as people make it out to be today, or do you think it's a little bit overdone?
I just my one man's opinion.
Yeah, sure.
I don't see how it doesn't continue to just exponentially explode. Autonomous vehicles and the amount of data that they throw off, right? Artificial intelligence, I think most people would say we're in the early days of that, and machine learning. So to me, it kind of goes back to, again, the kind of the mobile workforce, there's the mobile consumer, and the amount of data that is being thrown off is just, it's enormous. And I don't, perhaps I'm missing it, but I don't see a trend that's going to reverse that,
Yeah, you bet.
where there'll be less data locally
Yeah.
at the user, and the idea and the importance of being able to process and do compute around content, kind of at the source
Yeah.
of the data.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at like jet engines, and the amount of petabytes of data they throw off, on every flight, and the analysis. So
Yeah.
I don't think we're going to have less data.
Sure.
I think we'll have more data
Yep.
continuing, and so to me, it just seems that trend will continue. And again, I think it puts INAP in a very good position around kind of edge compute and kind of our network and our locations
Yeah,
and so
sure.
forth. But yeah, overall, David, I mean, I just don't see any reversal in that trend that I can see in the near future, that we're going to have less data, less mobility,
You
less
bet.
users around the world, and more demand for latency. And I want it now. I have 2 kids. Well, they're young men now, but 27 and 24. And I raise that as an example of, I mean, they never leave the house with cash in their pocket.
Sure.
They just don't.
Yeah.
Everything is about, I have my iPhone. I want it all to happen right now on my iPhone.
Yeah.
Right? And I don't see that the next generation is going to be less different. So,
Sure.
so that's kind of where I land on edge compute.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's funny because my kids, younger, don't have iPhones yet, but I think they wish that everything could happen on their iPhone that they don't have yet.
Yeah.
So
when do kids get iPhones these days?
I
At
know,
what age?
that's good. That's a question that's going on in the league
All
at
right,
home
well,
right now.
all
We're
right.
trying to hold off as long as we can,
All right.
but
Okay.
it seems like it's getting
good luck with
faster and
that.
faster. Yeah, you bet. Well, you've been in the industry for over 25 years, so you've had the opportunity to work with different companies. But from a leadership standpoint, as you think about your career, who are some people that have had an impact on you and helped shape the way that you not only look at the data center industry, but also just look at business in general, and who's impacted you in a positive way as it relates to leadership?
Yeah, no, interesting question.
Yeah.
I'll answer it this way. As I think about, from a leadership point of view, for me personally, what are my core principles?
Yeah.
And I have 2. And I explained it to the folks at INAP when I joined in the team, and I think they're fair. But I believe strongly in the golden rule. I believe very strongly that you treat people the way you want to be treated.
Yeah.
Right. And I learned that from my family and from my parents. Okay. So from a leadership point of view, and I fail miserably. My wife will tell you many times I don't treat people the way I should all the time, but I try. But that's a core principle, and that comes from my parents, frankly, and the way I was raised. So thank you for that to them. And then the other one principle is measure 3 times and cut once, but don't take too long to measure. And I learned that actually from a fellow named Chris Isaacson. That expression. He's the COO. Was at the time the COO of BATS, a big exchange out in Kansas City. And long story short, I was at Equinix, and BATS bought Direct Edge, so it was one exchange buying another. And BATS was a stock exchange, but they were a technology firm. And these guys were I was so impressed with their execution and just their focus on technology, but the way they executed. And I asked Chris, how do you do it? And he said, measure 3 times and cut once, and don't take too long to measure. And I really internalized that. So so it's a mix of push and press, get the most out of your organization, be thoughtful, be strategic, make the right decisions fast. Right.
Yeah.
That's what I try and do, and what I want my team to do. But I also want people to do it in a culture where we treat each other really, really well.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, and you gotta have both. You can't have one or the other.
Yeah, well, it's really exciting too because I think you're building a new, not new culture, but there's a new day at INAP, and that's some of those things I'm sure will be pressed through your leaders and people that you're working with.
I agree, and that's the plan.
Yeah, you bet. When you think about the industry in general, your time in the space, what gets you most excited about the next 5, 10 years, 20 years of the data center industry and how it's growing?
What excites me the most is it's all so early. I mean, everything is just all new. I mean, again, most people much smarter than I in the industry, I ask, well, where do you think we are in terms of cloud? Are we in the 2nd inning, the 9th inning? And people are like, well, the game is just starting. Yeah. So, and I think, again, that the data center industry in general just sits in such a great place because of edge compute.
Yep.
And the network latency. So I think that the industry in general sits in a fantastic place because, again, everybody's kind of trying to turn out of their own data centers. They recognize the need to move from CapEx to OpEx to focus on core competencies and leave the infrastructure to others. So I think it's an enormous opportunity for everybody, not just in the data center industry, but in IT in general. I mean, it is an exciting time.
Yes. Well, I would agree, and we're certainly excited to see INAP's new day begin and see what will happen in the future. So thank you so much for joining us, and
thank you.
Excited to see the progress down the road.
Thank you very much, David. I really appreciate the time and the opportunity, and being number 20.
You bet. There we go. Awesome.